everyone. Congresswoman Nancy Mace here. I'm in front of Trump Tower today, and I remember in 2015 when President Trump announced his run. I was one of his earliest supporters. I actually worked for the campaign in 2016. I worked in 7 different states across the country to help get him elected. I supported him again in 2020 because of policies I believed in. He brought American jobs back. He lowered our taxes, wages, and employment were better for every hardworking American in our country.
Fascinating. Donald Trump tried to defeat Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace of South Carolina. I got to say, I couldn't do that.
No.
I'm not saying, I mean, listen, people do what it's fine. I'm just saying, somebody tells me to go to hell, I'm going to tell them something worse right back. Yeah. But I'm just saying, we live in interesting times, and, well, it worked for her. She was on a field trip, of course, there to Trump Tower back in February, and she won last night. So let's go to Steve Kornacki at the big board. Steve, Trump has had some bad nights over the past month or two. Last night was not one of them. His candidates did extremely well in Nevada, and he split in South Carolina, right?
Yeah, he split in South Carolina, and as you say, in that first district race, the candidate who won, who he was going after, was really trying to run back toward him. So in some ways, that might have been a victory for him, too. But this was the big win for Trump in South Carolina. This is the 7th district. This is Russell Fry, a state legislator who had Donald Trump's endorsement. Look at this margin, better than 2-1. This is a 10-year incumbent Republican Congressman, Tom Rice, absolutely trounced. Fry, by getting more than 50%, wins this thing outright. There will be no runoff here. This is Rice, who voted to impeach Donald Trump. This was the first time we saw an incumbent Republican who voted to impeach Trump face Republican voters with Trump backing somebody else. And you just take a look inside this district. Obviously, Fry swept the district. The heart of the district is here. This is Horry County. Half the district is here. Basically, you're talking Myrtle Beach, Conway. This county right here was Donald Trump's strongest county in the state when he ran for president back in 2016 in the Republican primaries. So that's the kind of place that Rice was running in. You could see how Fry did in Horry County. You could see how he did in the district. So that is a win for Trump and his candidate there, a decisive loss for Tom Rice. And then you mentioned Nancy Mace. Now, Mace also targeted by Trump. Katie Arrington, the Trump-backed opponent here. This is Charleston. This is the Low Country. This was a closer race, but you played the clip there of what Mace has tried to do. In the wake of January 6th, she condemned Trump's behavior, condemned his actions, but then spent most of the rest of her freshman tenure trying to make peace with the Trump wing of the party. That strategy looks like it has paid off there. As you can see, an 8-point victory.
Let's go to the ground in South Carolina. Stay with us, Steve. We've got more to talk to you about. But in Charleston, we've got NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. So, Vaughn, what's the reaction there in South Carolina to the results? I'm thinking back to Mark Sanford's kind of stunning loss 4 years ago, where he said, the lesson I learned, don't cross Trump if you want to win in my district.
Right, and that's exactly what you saw Nancy Mace's evolution look like over the last 16 months. When she was first elected to Congress, she was quite direct, saying that she wanted to be a new voice for the Republican Party, that it needed to go through reconciliation, because Donald Trump, in her own words, put members of Congress in harm's way on January 6th. But you played that video of her outside of Trump Tower, and her closing message, when I asked her whether Donald Trump has a future as a leader in the Republican Party, she suggested that he potentially could, and that, in her words, it's a, quote, big party here. But compare that to Tom Rice over in the Myrtle Beach area. Tom Rice ousted from office after a decade of representing his district here. He got just about 25% of the vote, with Russell Fry, the Trump-backed challenger, ousting him here. I want to let you hear, though, from Nancy Mace, because I was asking her that question. She is that one member of Congress so far to sneak through, that one member who is on Trump's opposition list, somebody who he perceives as an opposition force within the Republican Party. I asked her now that she has snuck through and looking like she could potentially win a second term to office, what her role in the party looks like going forward. Take a listen. Donald Trump tried to oust you from the Republican Party. What is your message to Donald Trump now?
My message is the same to him as it is to anybody else on either side of the aisle. I am willing to work with anyone who's willing to work with me. Full stop.
after 2022, the Republican Party is going to be shaped even more in the image of Donald Trump. Based off of primaries we have already seen take place these last months, what role will you play in the Republican Party going forward?
I'm going to play as much of a role as I can, as I have so far. I am not unaccustomed to being called to the principal's office, and sometimes it's the vice principal's office. But I work really hard to represent the values of my district. I bring that voice to Washington, and that's why you saw us get elected and have a great win.
And now compare Nancy Mace and how she closed out this campaign and even her messaging last night to Tom Rice. When I asked him about Donald Trump in the future, he said Donald Trump is not the future of the Republican Party. And look who is potentially going back to Congress and who is not after last night's results.
Well, hey, Vaughn, it's Walt Isaacson. I got a question for you. These votes happened after the televised hearings of the commission. And it seems that maybe that didn't have much of an impact. It didn't sink in. Have you heard people talking about these hearings? And did it not in any way sway people away from Trump?
Donald Trump, over the last 18 months, has effectively been able to run his own campaign, not for re-election, but we've continually heard as we've traveled from Wyoming to Ohio to Pennsylvania, West Virginia, here to South Carolina, covering these primaries from voters, that those members of Congress, like Tom Rice, like Liz Cheney, the word is betrayal. The other word being used is traitor. Donald Trump has effectively, and propagated by other members of Congress, from Kevin McCarthy, Elise Stefanik to Fox News mouthpieces, effectively has been able to run a campaign leading up to these January 6th public hearings. And again, yesterday, talking with voters, we were hearing the same thing from so many of these Republican voters. Look at 45% of the voters in Nancy Mace's district voted to oust her. In Tom Rice's district, about 75% picked those Trump-aligned forces here. And just one other note, I think, as we're talking about this, yes, Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger made their ways in winning re-election bids here. But when you're looking at the members of Congress, not only is Tom Rice out of office, you also have Fred Upton that retired. David McKinley lost his primary in West Virginia last month. You have the retirements of Kinzinger, Katko, Gonzalez, Senator Toomey, Senator Burr. There is the reality that in Congress, among the Republican conference, it will be shaped more in the image of Donald Trump by the time we get through these midterm primaries.
All right, Vaughn Hilliard reporting for us in Charleston, South Carolina. Thank you very much.